I'm Mary Lyons, the Wealth Woman.
I'm Eric Alexander with Acorn Grove.
Welcome to the Wealth and Income Podcast. Today's episode is one of my favorites. I love when we do case studies. I think these are the moments where it's not just philosophical or intellectual or emotional. This is where the rubber meets the road and people can begin to see themselves in clients that we have worked with and people that we have taught new ways and strategies of doing things that are life-changing. And so to me, getting to share the stories of the possibilities that are real world, I think puts all the color into the picture we paint the rest of the time.
Yeah, well, because philosophy is great until it doesn't impact anybody. So I think it's the cool part of we get to talk about cool stuff, but then we also get to help people, which is, I don't know what else we would do with our lives.
What's the saying? Education without action is pointless.
Yep.
Right? You have to take what you learn and actually do something with it. And I think the easiest way to do that is when you hear a story of someone and you can see a piece of yourself in that story. So this to me is one of the most exciting things we get to do. And I love that today we get to showcase work that you have done. So a lot of times we do case studies and it's a joint client or something we've done together, but this is somebody that you have gotten a chance to work with and teach and educate and consult with. And so I get to play more of a interviewee type or interviewer. No, I am not the interviewee today, the interviewer type of role. And you get to tell this story, which is so awesome.
Yeah, well, and the funnest part of this one is I think it highlights something that we're both seeing a fair amount with clients that are coming through is I really like what I do, but it's really hard. I don't know if I can keep this pace for 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. I don't know if I could keep doing it this long. What if I could work really hard for a little bit and then slow down? Right.
Yeah, you're right. That is a recurring theme right now. I hadn't really thought about that until you just said it.
Yeah, but I think it's actually smart for the people though, too, because it's, I've got a lot of energy when I'm 20. I got a lot of energy when I'm 30. I'm almost 50. I'm tired most days. Like, I don't know if I can, there's a certain amount of my mind is willing, but the body is not able, or whatever the phrase is. Right. And I think sort of building a plan so that if you can do it, great, go kill it. But if you want to take a break, you can. And you and I had a conversation just before this that made me think about it. Like, work is not work if it's motivating. And if I didn't have to do the work, if I didn't have to show up because I had the money to go do it, I'm probably going to work harder because it's a choice, not a have to.
Yeah, I mean, that you're right. This is the conversation we were having right before we hopped on to do this recording, is that sometimes when you work really, really hard and you're doing it because you're connected to purpose or impact, it's really easy to keep working. But when you are working really, really hard because there's a lot of pressure and you have to do it or everything falls apart, it's a totally different feeling, the way you're showing up, right? One of them is very scary. That second one I just mentioned, the latter. And the previous one where you're doing it, it's like you can see all the progress and you can be present through all the progress because you aren't rooted in fear. It becomes about the abundance and the love and what you're pouring into the world. If I can go woo-woo there for just a second.
Wow, you drifted right into that one. That was awesome.
Right, I did. I feel like the older I get, the more open to some of that kind of stuff I am. Like, I feel like God and the universe show up in different ways if you're open to it. When I was younger, I was like, no, everything has to have a logical explanation. And now I'm like, no, it doesn't. There's a little bit of magic in the world and I'm okay leaning into that sometimes. But I think what's really interesting is this particular client that you have worked with, this couple, he's been in the same field for a while and he's had ups and downs throughout it, where there have been times in his life where the compensation was a little more sparse because of what was going on, either culturally or economically, situationally. Right. And then there are moments where it is absolutely booming. But this gentleman is logical enough to understand that just because the money is coming in right now doesn't mean that it will forever. And he has a tremendous work ethic, obviously, to be as successful as he is as you start painting this. But he's logical enough to know that there are factors outside of his control and that he needs to prepare so that when things change again, because change is inevitable, he'll be ready to accept that, and his financial plan will too.
So let's jump in. So this couple, they're doing really well, right?
Let's call them Bob and Sue. I feel like that's easy. That way we can name them.
Yeah, Bob and Sue. So Bob's doing really well. Sue works, but she's mainly working from home. And they got kids in high school and into college. And so if there's a family in the crunch years, that's these guys, right? They got a lot of cash flowing out the door. And to your point, the income hasn't always been amazing. There's been moments in time where it's been a little scary, and then there's moments of abundance. And to their credit, to Bob and Sue's credit, it's like, hey, we just doubled our income over the last 3 or 4 years, right? It's gone from being a little bit scary to holy crap, we have more
I
than
don't think they were that scared when it was 400 a year. So let's
fair enough, right? You can be a lot scared at 400, right? But they've doubled, right? They've gone from about 400 to 800, which is somewhat unusual. Well, not somewhat.
amazing.
Very unusual for them, right? But to their credit, most of us will go out and buy Maseratis and Aston Martins and big houses, and they're like, nope, we're just going to live on what we've been making. And to their credit, and I think a lot of people run into this situation. It's like, well, we've just gone from 4 to 8. I don't know what to do with it. We've never had just nobody shows up with an extra 400 grand and says, well, good luck. Let's figure it out. And so they were doing what most people would do. Actually, most people wouldn't do this. Most people would just spend it. They're like, we don't want to have this show up in our bank account because we'll go crazy. So we have to protect ourselves from ourselves. So we're just going to have it go into deferred comp, which is sort of like a quasi 401 at that point. Like we're just going to defer all the money. It's just going to go into this bucket just because we don't know anything else to do with it. We just got to get it out of here.
So I want to comment on two things. So first of all, how amazing that they know themselves well enough to acknowledge that, right? Don't let it hit our account. Let's try and be strategic about what we're doing. So a deferred compensation plan allows them to receive the income but not be taxed on it yet, because technically you're deferring when you touch the asset. And so when you finally put your hands on it is when you pay the taxes. So especially because they're now suddenly making $800,000 a year, they're in the very highest tax bracket you can be in. Deferring some of the taxes feels immediately intuitive, although in the long run, it may or may not actually make sense for them, simply because we don't know what taxes are going to look like 20 years from now. So if the tax rates go up, it could be worse for them. If the tax rates go down, then it could be better. But historically, the highest marginal bracket has averaged about a high 50s%. And right now it's at 37. So, they're just like, we don't know what to do. Let's not put our hands on it. Let's keep it invested. Let's see what happens. So kudos to them for, first of all, recognizing that human nature is consumption of the resources that you can put your hands on, and avoiding that lifestyle creep. That takes some real discipline to do it. And then secondly, I think they're kind of approaching things from a very conventional standpoint, because conventional wisdom is defer so that you don't have to pay taxes, without necessarily thinking about, am I paying more taxes over my lifetime or just not this year?
Right. Well, and they have a bunch of two-legged tax deductions walking around still.
Right.
Those go away when you're 65, hopefully. Hopefully they have other jobs, or at least have aged out of that, right? So the conversation was, hey, look, I like what I do, but it is incredibly stressful. It's incredibly demanding. I'm always traveling. It is a pressure cooker of a job. Now I get paid well to go do it, but it's a pressure cooker of a job. So I think I'd like to go take this money while we can, work for another work for about 10 more years. I think I can keep that pace, but that gets me to about 55, right? That gets him to about 55 on that side. And then I want to just go do an individual contributor job. I don't want to quit, because I can't imagine going from 100 miles an hour to 2, but maybe I could go from 100 to 50. Like maybe we could just pull back a little bit, do some other stuff.
Well, because that much travel and those many hours and that much stress, because they're coordinating large scale events, that's a lot. That's the kind of thing where, like, you're missing time with your spouse, you're eating at weird times, you're constantly changing time zones and dealing with jet lag and sleep interruption and all of that kind of stuff. There's a fair amount of cortisol just being dumped in, and there is no routine for working out or eating or any of that, because every day is something new that you're doing. I think most of us, I don't know, it's very common when we're young to think, I can do this forever. And then when we start actually feeling the wear and tear on the body, we're like, hey, wait a minute, can I? If I need an escape hatch, where is it?
Where is it? And because I think at that point, and to their credit about not letting lifestyle creep get a hold of them, man, once you start spinning that, we need a bigger house, we need a bigger this, we need more of that, right? It becomes a have to now, right? A luxury once enjoyed becomes a necessity. It becomes a necessity, and then the pressure just keeps getting higher and higher. Yeah. And so to your point, like, kudos for them of going, you know what? we don't need all this stuff. We're fine. Let's be smart, right? And so what we did is we taxed the crap out of that money. We're like, all right, look, what would happen if we didn't just dump it all into that deferred comp, that long-term savings plan? And we taxed the heck out of it. And we just pulled that into savings and then tried to figure out where it should go. And so what could we do for 10 years? And then what if we stopped at the end of 10 years? So 45 to 55. And then for the next 10 years, go do something else. Go be a fry cook somewhere. Go be an individual contributor somewhere. Go do something else that doesn't require all of you. And then the other mission is they really wanted to get out and go buy some land. And the land right now for where they're looking and the house they wanted to build is at about $1.5 million. They're just trying to get out of the city, go to a slower pace of life. And so that was the other thing.
So Eric, I have a question real quick, and this goes to the taxation and all of that. How old is this couple right now?
They're just a shade over 45, but basically 45.
So mid 40s. So part of what happens is, and I think this is a conversation worth happening because I see people do this all the time. We get so focused on minimizing taxes and just growing our wealth that we don't actually think what we want the money to do. And so what I heard you just say, and I think this is so key for a lot of people, is that if they are thinking about retiring prior to 59 and a half, then it makes sense for them to have access to capital without having to pay penalties or monkey around with the 72T type plans where you can take distributions out, but they have to be systematic and they have to be the same amount. And there's a bunch of rules and hoopla to jump through, right? But when you think about it, if their goal is to be in a space where they have freedom prior to that time period, then making sure they have access to cash for at least that many years is really important as a part of that.
Yeah, because presumably they're going to have 4, 5, 6 years where getting access to an IRA or 401k is not possible, or it's going to be really annoying. Yeah. Okay. And so what we did on that side is we redid it all, right? And if you guys have been following this for 4.5 seconds at all in this podcast, you know that one of the things that we're looking at is how do we balance insurance and investments? How do we balance accumulation engines, big rates of return, big upside potential with distribution engines that we typically get through insurance to be able to go balance that system out? And the closer we get to the balance, the more efficient the income is. If we have all insurance, that's terrible. If we have all investments, that's terrible. This is the giant financial seesaw of life that if we can get it kind of balanced out, then you get a really efficient income production on the other end of it. And that income is what drives everything else. So everything drives back to more income.
And I'm just going to add to that for people who are just tuning in for the first time or they're relatively new. There is a lot of data when you start looking for it and proof that strategies that combine investments and insurance tools together outperform investment-only strategies. And I think there's a lot of people, advisors, talking heads, all of that kind of repeat things they've heard or repeat things that seem intuitive or easy. And it's very easy to do only one degree of measurement, which is where do I get the biggest rate of return, and have that seem like a logical decision. But when you look at it, there are some major issues when it comes time to spend your money that you need to start dealing with today. You can't wait until suddenly you're retiring and then go, oh, the safe withdrawal rate is 3 to 4%. Now I have to figure out a plan because you're going to be doing it last minute and scrambling and who knows what's available. And so planning for that in advance is typically going to increase what somebody spends by 30 to 70%, depending on all the other factors in their situation.
Yeah, 100%. And so what I wanted to go do, and this is where this sort of what I would call a 2-part model or a 2-stage model is really kind of fun, because it says, one of the things I wanted to give Bob and Sue is, hey, look, what happens at the end of 10 years and you're just like, you know what, I'm done. I'm out. I thought I wanted to go do an individual contributor role. I'm done. I don't want to go do that.
Well, and real quick,
it
may not be that they want to be done. There could be other factors that require them to
100%.
Physical factors, right? Intellectual factors. There are all kinds of different things that can happen during someone's lifetime. So I love the fact that, like, even if they don't plan to take an escape hatch, you're still giving them one.
Well, and I still just want to let them know how bad it's going to hurt. Right? If you're going to take the escape hatch, is this going to kill me or is this going to be okay? And so I ran it 2 ways. I said, all right, what happens if we do the traditional model? We're moving this money around. We dump it all on the market. Go as fast as we can get there. And you quit. You're done at 56. And the math that it came out to is about 215 grand in income every year They did it all traditional, all the same way, and they're just done. And then I reran it and I built that more optimal system, that insurance, the investments, all of them working together. And the fun part about that, and I'm gonna give the headline, I'm gonna go to I don't want to bury the lead. But at the end of it, at 56, their income in the more balanced model was about 220. So it doesn't seem like you're getting much more out of that by doing a more
No, but you
optimal
totally
system.
left out the detail here. That's a
I
really big
know.
detail.
But the 220 was after we pulled out $1.5 million from the model to go buy property. So
Right. So,
we got
hey, I want a giant ranch where I can go spend time and just kick it. I want to spend $1.5 million to do that. And you're saying they can pay cash for that ranch and still have slightly more income than they were going to have if they didn't buy the ranch and they pursued conventional methodologies.
correct. And they're like, yeah, I want that. And that was sort of those fun moments of like, okay, well, we don't have a mortgage because we just paid cash for this thing. The kids are out of school. And so maybe we don't need any more than 220, right? Which is always going to be that
Texas,
conversation.
hopefully they get their ag exemptions. They don't have to pay our crazy property tax rate. But Eric, I mean, think about this. This is so key to the process. So if you're talking to a conventional advisor and you just say, I want to exit at 56 and you're getting a conventional plan and they spend no real time talking to you about what's important in your life and they don't know what your dreams are, how do they facilitate you buying the ranch? They don't, right? You just end up with what you end up with because you don't have the right measuring stick. But because you took them through the process of discovering what their dream life looks like, and you know that that's important to them, you were able to build a way that dealt with the tax situation, that dealt with acquiring property, and that still created more income for them in a way that is totally stress-free. That's crazy.
Well, and I think that's the thing, right? Is that if I know what my worst case scenario is and I pull the lever on the worst case scenario, then at least I know the number.
Your worst case scenario is you can go sit on your ranch, have a good time, and have 200,000 plus of income per year for the rest of your life, potentially guaranteed once you trigger that income. And because I know the secrets behind what we do, I know there's a huge legacy component that plays out there as well that
Correct.
Isn't necessarily there in the conventional methodology. So, I mean,
yeah, because you could have burned through it, right, in that other model.
And I feel like this is a spot where you get to say something that sounds like, but wait, there's more. And I am on the edge of my seat waiting to hear what that looks like. Like, how do you make this better than you already did?
Well, and so that was the other end of it is like, okay, so maybe you go get not a Joe job because he's probably going to end up making 200 to 250 in his individual contributor role. So, I mean, these are high functioning humans.
I can't help it, right?
He kind of can't help being awesome because he really is. He's an amazing human. So if he does the full plan, right, he stops working in 10 years and then he just stops saving and then they go do something else for the next 10 years and then retire. But he's leaving that money growing and working and sort of percolating in the background. Then at 66, 65, 66, he's looking at about 390 in income. And they're living on about
400 number.
Yeah, which gets him right close to that 400.
And he's gotten to live on the ranch for 10 years at this point.
Correct. And I think the conversation then becomes every year that you can go handle this other Joe job, the 220 number, the one at 55, right, just keeps getting bigger.
Right.
Right. So, and if I didn't run this math, but if I just do linear math of 390 versus, 400 grand versus 220, every year you can work is another 18 grand a year that you get, right? If I just do divide by 10, right? So it's that idea of how many more years is it worth it, right? It's 18 grand, 1,500 a month. Yeah, but our bills are 100 grand, so who cares? Right. Then they have, and I think to the point that you've made so many times, and I've made it as well, is for the first time in my life, I know the lever to pull to know what I'm going to get. And even if I'm going to get something crappy, I at least know that the lever I'm pulling is going to get me that number, and I'm not surprised.
Right. Well, and how cool is it to be in a position where you're not just making a decision about when to retire out of fear, but because you actually know the difference that it's going to make. And I'm actually going to tie this back. I get to have a really fun meeting later today with somebody that I got to model out some potential options for. And they were really, really exciting options because they're very close to retirement. The wife was like, he needs to retire today because I'm retired. And the husband was like, oh no, I got to keep working. There's no way we can make this work. And when we modeled out their plan between Social Security, the assets, and kind of the restructuring type of thing that we're talking about, he could retire today and get a raise. So, he was shocked that that's where he was because he didn't realize some of the things that we do were options for them. And so we modeled out year by year for the next 5 years how income changed based on very conservative rates of return and the distribution strategies that we teach. And he was like, so I could go into work tomorrow and just, flip him the bird and be done. Yeah. And I'm like, if you want to. And he's like, this is very empowering. He's like, I'm going to stop saying yes to everything and just see what happens. Right. And it's not that he's not engaged with work. It's that there are other people possibly more suited to certain things, people he can start to develop if he doesn't feel like he has to prove himself every day just to keep his job. And so he can start looking at succession planning in his role in a way that he feels comfortable doing and growing up some of the other people because he doesn't have to hoard the work to be like, I'm valuable. Don't fire me just because I'm old. And I think that it's so cool for him because he's like, really, I love what I do, which is why I could keep doing it for another 5 years. Now, knowing I don't have to, he's like, I get to wake up and do this because I feel like it. And that changes things. You show up differently. You can contribute more powerfully because you're not contributing from a place of fear. You're empowered to make these decisions. And that's exactly what you were showing this couple is that you can be done. But if everything is still good and he's enjoying himself and he wants to work 15 years in the same job, cool beans. If he wants to work something that is less stressful, he can do that. He wants to stop working, he can do that. And he knows what that's going to look like in every scenario. So it's not a hope and a prayer at this point. It's knowledge.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other end of it, and you alluded to it on the back end of it from a legacy standpoint, at the low end, he burns down all of his investment assets and all he's got left is insurance kind of thing. Like the worst case scenario is looking at about $3.8 million that he leaves his family. Plus the property. And on the upper end of it, it's closer to 8 or 9. And so
he can't leave his kids. And he's not leaving it to them when they're like 18 years old and going to do crazy stuff. Do you know the age gap roughly between him and his kids? Said they were in college and high school.
So probably about 20 years.
25 year age difference. And so if they make it to 95, their kids are 70, 75. Yeah. At that point, the likelihood, the reality of this situation is that not only do they have an out, they have a way to get the things they want and still maintain the same income levels, or if they choose not to buy a ranch, right, then they end up in a position where they have more income because those dollars are hard at work for them. What's so cool to me about that, again, is that money is going to show up roughly at the time that their children are retiring. And so you can start to see like, oh, this shows up right when the next generation really needs it to be able to slow down. And you can start to see generationally what this does in a way that isn't, I can't have it if I'm going to leave it to you. It's, I'm going to enjoy the heck out of this and you're going to get something that will help you move forward later.
Yeah, well, if he makes it to life expectancy, which is, 80, 85, the kids are 60, 65 at that point. Mm-hmm. That is the exact moment when you would like to have $3, $4, $5, $6 million show up in your bank account. Like, I mean, that's from a timing standpoint.
I mean, I'd like to have that happen at any time if I didn't have to lose my parents.
Well, I was about to say, well, there's a caveat.
Let me put that caveat.
Hey, Joe, don't go on a boat trip with
me. The lottery, I would take it, or a fantastic investment would also work.
Right. And the neat part about it.
I need to underline that. I will keep my parents over any money I could receive. I just underline, italics, exclamation point, and now we can move on.
But Joe, just in case you're listening, don't ever go on a boat trip again with your daughter. So
he just got a boat too.
I know. And the other point, and I'll end here on this one is, his kids are probably they're starting to get to that point where they're going to get married and have kids and do their family stuff. So 10 years out, he decides I'd rather go live where my grandkids live, assuming maybe they move out or do something. Maybe I don't want a ranch. Maybe it's more important for me to be where my grandkids are. Well, now I've got $1.5 million or whatever it would be at that point, right? To go decide what I want to go do. Where do I want to live so that we get to enjoy that family.
And I don't think you accounted anywhere for the equity in his primary residence.
Not a penny.
Right. So that's all additive at that
Right.
point. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is so fun to me because I feel like the way we get to build strategy when someone has extra, it gets so creative because it really does become about what do you want? What's possible for you? How do we maximize your experience while we're here? How do we maximize what you're able to leave behind? And those conversations are just as important as the ones that are, how am I going to make it? Right? It might be the other extreme of it. I think sometimes it's hard for people to envision that. But for people who are in that space, being able to be very deliberate about what you're building. I mean, what I love about what you've done for this family, Eric, is that you are literally creating space for them to live intentionally.
Yeah. And to make choices that they wouldn't have been able to do.
Right. Right.
And you actually nailed on something that I thought was really important. And then I'll swear I'll shut up. Is so take off a zero or cut it in half. Wow, 400 to 800. Wow, it must be like, well, make it 100 to 200. Make it I mean, it's not the money, it's the ratios, right? And so if you're living on 100 and you get a bonus that you're all of a sudden in a new job, you're making 200. That seems like a double leap, but that's not crazy.
Right.
Well, the math is just the same. It's just the strategy and being able to kind of think through it. So
right.
You don't need 800 grand before life is going to look great for you. That's my point.
Right. Yes. Right. No, I think that is a very good point. I think when you were looking for abundance, you will find it. When you were looking for ways to create more for yourself and your family, you will find it. I think when people are motivated by fear and they just don't want to lose what they have, that's what they'll do. And I love the fact that there is a space where we get to take tried and true, proven methodologies and strategies and apply them creatively to people's lives, because money is just a tool meant to help you build a life you are really excited to live. And, you know, if you're looking at your own life going, I've got some tools here, what the heck do I do with them? Then you need to search out Eric, because he is very good at his job. Eric, if they are looking for you, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me at Acorn Grove, wherever you use social media. What about you?
If you're looking for me, I am at The Wealth Woman. I am on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us.
Mary Lyons and Eric Alexander are registered representatives and investment advisor representatives of and securities offered through One America Securities Incorporated, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA, SIPC. Wealth Woman, Benchmark Income Group, and the Big Wealth Podcast is not an affiliate of One America Securities or the companies of One America, and is not a broker-dealer or registered investment advisors. The use of asset allocation or diversification does not assure a profit or guarantee against a loss. Investing involves risk, which includes potential loss of principal. Provided content is for overview and informational purposes only and is not intended and should not be relied upon as individualized tax, legal, fiduciary, or investment advice. All numeric examples and any individual shown are hypothetical and were used for explanatory purposes only. Actual results may vary.